Good morning. Welcome back into Wake Up America. Joining us now for the latest on the debt ceiling, the border crisis in 2024, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Great to have you on set, sir. Good to see you.
Good morning.
First, want to get your reaction to Tim Scott announcing that he's running for the presidency yesterday. Can he win this nomination?
Well, that's going to be for the voters to decide. Tim is a good friend. He's a terrific senator. And I'll tell you, he's got an amazing life story. It really is inspirational. Tim is someone who understands in his gut and also in his lived experience the incredible promise of America. And I'm glad for Tim's voice. I think he's a very important voice in the Senate, and I'm sure he will add a lot to this race.
Yeah, so amazing life story, personal story, but we don't know a lot about his personal life. And at some point, those questions will be asked as we make our way closer to especially August, the debate stage in Milwaukee. You have a comment on that?
Oh, look, I'm sure that there will be nasty political attacks between the different candidates in the primary. That we can expect. We've already seen some of that. And it's a rough and tumble business. That's how it operates.
That's a good point. Could you imagine, I know in 2016 you, before the convention, and Carly Fiorina kind of teamed up to form this super ticket. Could you imagine Ron DeSantis and maybe New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu doing something similar? Or maybe Donald Trump and somebody like Tim Scott? They were flirting yesterday on Truth Social. We saw this.
Oh, look, who knows? You can certainly see we've got lots of talent on the Republican side. I feel grateful for that. I think it's probably premature to be teaming up VP nominees since at this point we haven't had a single debate and it's not entirely clear who the field will be, although I guess DeSantis is supposed to be announcing this week. And, you know, as I look at the field, I think it is principally a battle between Trump and DeSantis, and we'll see how that shakes out. That'll be the voters who will decide that.
Two-man race already.
I think in many respects it is, yes.
Okay. I want to talk about the debt ceiling. This is Speaker Kevin McCarthy yesterday after meeting with President Biden at the White House. Let's listen.
I do not like the idea that you govern by chaos. You govern by a deadline. So all the way back in January, I requested meetings with the president after I won Speaker, only on this issue. Unfortunately, denying our ability to meet put us in this situation. I believe we can still get there. I believe we can get it done.
All right, so I'm wondering, so don't forget the House now under McCarthy, they've got 72 hours if they want it to review a bill. We've got 9 days left. Can they meet that June 1st deadline, or is that an arbitrary deadline?
You know, the deadline is somewhat arbitrary. Janet Yellen put it out there. Treasury has what are called extraordinary measures, which are essentially means they can generally push back these sorts of deadlines. That being said, we shouldn't be backed up against any sort of deadline at all. The reason we are is because Joe Biden and the White House, their opening position was objectively unreasonable. The House stepped forward and showed real leadership. The House passed a bill. It's a good bill. It's a serious bill. It raises the debt ceiling, but it does so along with important spending restraints that cuts about $4.8 trillion over 10 years. That was a very reasonable piece of legislation that passed. And what the White House said is for a long time, Joe Biden said, I'm not going to talk, I'm not going to negotiate, I won't even come to the table. That was ridiculous. And it was so ridiculous, ultimately, he had to blink, but he waited so long that they're now backed up in a corner.
Maybe light at the end of the tunnel, though. It at least kind of seemed that way yesterday. You were on a short list at one point to be a member of the Supreme Court. On Sunday, I heard you call the use of the 14th Amendment legally frivolous. Does Biden, in your opinion, your legal opinion, does he even have the authority to do something like that?
Not remotely. So, look, the 14th Amendment was one of 3 amendments that was passed right after the Civil War. And the provision in the 14th Amendment that people are talking about right now is Section 4 of the 14th Amendment. That concerned debts from the Civil War. And it said 2 things. Number one, we just fought a Civil War that was very expensive. It said the United States is going to pay our debts from the Civil War, the debts that we'd taken out.
Right.
But secondly, they said we're not going to pay the debts of the Confederacy. So there are 2 components of it. The Union, which won, kept the country together. Those debts will be repaid. But the debts the Confederacy took, those debts will not be repaid. The argument that Biden's trying to put that somehow empowers the president to ignore the law on the debt ceiling is frankly laughable. I think it would be thrown out of court very, very quickly. And among others, even Barack Obama agreed with that. Barack Obama, when left-wing radicals asked him to do that, Obama said, no, we can't do that. I think Biden is just throwing catnip to the far left. If he tried it, it would be thrown out of court quickly. And by the way, At most, what Biden's argument would support is that the federal government should pay interest on the debt first, which is what they should do anyway. I mean, let me be clear. We should never default on the debt. And there's one human being on planet Earth that could ensure that happens. His name is Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr. And a responsible president would stand up, would look the American people in the eye and say, hear me clearly. America will never, ever, ever default on our debt. And the way you do that, regardless of what happens with the debt ceiling, is every month the federal government takes in substantially more in tax revenue than interest on the debt. And so Biden could just say, I'm instructing the Treasury Department, pay interest on the debt first. That would take default off the table. The reason he doesn't do that is he wants to scaremonger. He wants to scare the stock markets. He wants to scare the bond markets. He wants to threaten your 401k because he doesn't want to cut spending.
Right. Do you think Joe Biden, by the way, is the nominee for the Democrats?
You know, right now it looks like that. I think actually the Democrat and Republican ticket are oddly intertwined in that 6 months ago, I did not think Biden was going to be the nominee. He's so clearly diminished that he's not up to the job, and everybody knows that. The Republicans know that, but the Democrats know that, too.
I think the American people are starting to realize that as well.
It's obvious he's too old and far too often is not aware of anything going on around him. What I think has changed is I think right now, today, the Democrats believe Donald Trump is going to be the nominee. And in the Democrats' mind, if Trump is the nominee, I think they want Biden to be the nominee because I think their strategy would be hide Biden in the basement and just attack Trump the whole time. And they think that's a winning strategy. I'll say this. If the Democrats in the coming months change their mind, if they suddenly believe someone else is going to be the nominee other than Trump, I think the Democrats would throw Biden overboard and find someone younger and, from their perspective, more up to the task. So I think the two are intertwined.
As to who that would be?
So I think if Biden were out of the picture, I think the top four on the Democrat side would be Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, and Gavin Newsom. And if those were the four, I actually think Elizabeth Warren wins that. I think she is the id of the Democrat Party. They are angry and socialist and far left. And I think Elizabeth Warren would be a extraordinarily dangerous president. God forbid she ever occupies that role.
Senator, I want to talk about the border. Of course, you represent the great state of Texas. 2018, Beto O'Rourke, you're running for the Senate. That was a close race.
Yes.
I think it was less than 2 points.
Just over 2.6.
Just over 2.6. There you go. Thank you. Everyone always asks, why is the administration letting this happen? I'm wondering what you think about maybe, hey, Texas has got what, almost 40 electoral votes, 38? How about turning Texas purple, maybe blue? Because a lot of those districts that Beto O'Rourke won, right along the southern border.
Well, and you're exactly right. The 6.6 million illegal immigrants that have come in under Joe Biden, I think the reason that Biden and Harris and the Democrats are allowing this chaos is they want to fundamentally change the voting electorate, not just in Texas, all across the country, because those 6.6 million illegal immigrants are coming to every city in America. Look, we're in New York City right now. The Democrat mayor here is freaking out about a few thousand illegal immigrants coming to New York.
Right.
Texas, we've seen on the southern border 6.6 million. And I do have to say, you know, you pointed out the 2018 election. That was my last reelect.
Yep.
It was, at the time, it was the most expensive Senate race in the country. We were outspent 3-1, and I won by just 2 points. I'm running again in 2024. The Democrats have already identified my race as their top target to come after in 2024. So I would encourage folks at home, come to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org,
right,
because they're going to flood cash into Texas,
right,
and we need to defend Texas, and we need to stand up and fight against the lunacy from the other side.
I remember that in 2018, by the way. The NAACP, by the way, and this was fascinating, issuing a travel advisory in Florida saying it's hostile to black Americans. You tweeted immediately that that is totally ridiculous. Ron DeSantis called it a stunt. Byron Donalds echoed that sentiment. Why are they doing this, and how much do you think has to do with the fact that DeSantis is going to announce before Friday?
Yeah, 100%. And it really is sad. Look, if you look at the civil rights movement, the NAACP has an amazing history of fighting against the horrors of racial segregation and bigotry, and it was heroic. You look at the marches and the sit-ins and taking out segregated schools and taking out Jim Crow. I am a big fan of the enormous courage the NAACP showed. Today, sadly, it has become a partisan and a left-wing partisan organization, no longer focused on civil rights. And as I said in that tweet, I think Dr. King would be ashamed of what's happened to the NAACP. You know, the NAACP is completely AWOL on school choice. School choice is the civil rights issue of our day. If you want to actually provide hope and opportunity to African-American kids and Hispanic kids trapped in poverty, nothing is more powerful than school choice. But sadly, the NAACP is more concerned about cozying up to Democrat politicians than actually fighting for the constituency they were formed to fight for. And you know, it's heartbreaking to see what had been venerable civil rights organizations just becoming partisan mouthpieces.
A story that we will continue to spotlight. Texas Senator Ted Cruz joining us on Wake Up America. Great to see you.
Great
Thanks
to see
for
you.
coming in.